Tell me about your mother.
Well, yeah. You see, I was adopted, and
No two people are alike in that regard, in their perceptions of the world and the things that affect them. So how can we have some kind of blanket statement like crying is bad?
I've only seen my dad cry once, and it's because I lipped off to him and he smacked me. And
When I was younger, things were so binary. Like, you get angry, you get violent, right? Like, that's how it is.
there was a little brief section where I was dating a girl that knew how to push buttons and did it gleefully. There was a really great philosopher that said, chocolate rain, some stay dry and others feel the pain. Welcome to another kitchen sink microscopy. I'm Casey Rochford, and you may notice this is a slightly different venue. We're just chilling.
Yeah, and I'm Eric Rosenblatt, and don't forget, we write our own music, so stick around to the end of the episode, and you can check out a new song. You can get it at iTunes and Spotify. That's where we have our music. Find something new, go to ksmvidcast.com if you want to go to our website and check out new stuff. As you can see, this is a bit of a deviation from the norm. That's because Casey is, like, how many miles away are you? Normally?
664 leagues.
That's, seems a little close, but, yeah, normally you're very far away now.
Well, in the last episode, I mentioned that my mom was going to have surgery, and she made it through, but I'm in town, so...
Yeah, so we figured we'd do like an in-person thing, which we've never done before, so this is kind of a new thing. So what are we going to talk about today?
Well, I thought it would be good to talk about emotions.
Oh, wait, hang on a second. Where's my clipboard and pen? Tell me about your mother.
Well, yeah. You see, I was adopted, and I never really. I don't think I was hugged until I was 2 weeks old.
Wait a second. This isn't a Rorschach test. This is a magazine about
Titties?
Tattoos.
Tattoos. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, yeah. So we got our beers. Another one here.
But no, really, like when it comes to emotions, though, I feel like people pick good and bad emotions. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, yeah. People look at emotions as being like positive or negative,
right?
And I think that's probably the wrong way to look at it, because I think it's sort of a reaction to the circumstances based on your experience. You know, and we've talked about this before, the differences between one's own experiences from one person to another kind of dictating how you perceive the world around you. And yet, there's this idea that everything is all homogenous, right? Like, oh, there's good emotions and there's bad emotions. And bad is a bad thing, right? If you're feeling down or you're feeling quote-unquote negative emotions, that's a bad thing. And you should always be happy. And, let's just say, one of my favorite movies, Inside Out. kind of illustrates how silly that is. Like how the negative emotions, what we consider to be negative, actually are constructive, and they're sort of a progressive thing. Like as you get older, become an adult, you learn and you change, and you kind of evolve a little bit, and undergoing those kinds of negative emotions, what we consider negative, is part of that, and I don't think it's a bad thing.
No.
I look at that scene. There's a scene in Inside Out where Riley remembers this hockey game, I think it was. It's been a few years, so I don't remember it with total clarity, but she's remembering this hockey game that was like a mixture of happiness and sadness, and it showed her like how the sadness was actually not a bad thing. It was sort of like a bittersweet kind of emotion, and might actually be good. Mm-hmm. That's oversimplification, but
Well, yeah, I find it to be a far greater detriment to try to force emotions one way or the other. Mm-hmm.
The idea that we should always be happy or something.
Yeah, like people that are constantly looking at the bright side and constantly trying to downplay negative situations and make you feel like, just make you feel good because it makes them feel better to be around feel good emotions or whatever. That just annoys the shit out of me. And it's like, that's not healthy.
No, I don't think so. And, if you go into that kind of territory where you expect and, live your life experiencing only bliss or something like that, you start to go into this kind of Brave New World territory. Mm-hmm. And I encourage anybody who thinks that you should always be happy or that happiness is perfection or something like that, you should probably read that book by Aldous Huxley. It's illuminating, shall we say.
Yeah. When people say they're always happy, right off the bat, I just feel like you're fake as shit. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, because emotions are natural, like they, in the flow chart of the way the brain operates, like emotions come before anything. Like, like as soon as a stimulus happens, an emotion is elicited, and everything that follows is how you react to it and what you say in response to it and all that stuff. And then to basically try to suppress something that's more or less just an autonomous reaction to natural stimuli. I mean, that can't be healthy, right?
No, I wouldn't say so. And yeah, like, I think that experiencing some kind of anguish or what we call negative emotions is a signal that something's wrong, that maybe, you need to do something. There's a problem that should be addressed, whatever it is. Maybe it's a family situation or a personal issue or something like that, but it's not bad in itself. It's not bad to feel bad, right? We all feel bad from time to time, and that's part of growth. Should you always defer to your emotions? I don't think so. I think it's good to kind of like have a little bit of control over your emotions, like be able to.
I was just gonna say that because like anger tends to make you say things that takes away your filter. Mm-hmm. Let's say that.
Yeah, you'll say things you might regret.
Yeah,
maybe you don't actually mean, but in the moment it feels stronger than it is.
Yeah.
And you could damage relationships in that way. Yeah, but being sad, I don't think is a bad thing. Being depressed isn't a bad thing. Like feeling lonely or something like that, or feeling like you're a failure. That could actually be the motivating factor to get you to improve yourself and like do something amazing.
Yeah.
If life is always good, if everything is always amazing and everything's fantastic, well, there's no reason to change.
Yeah. And then, another way that society tries to repress emotion is this idea that like crying is almost taboo, especially for dudes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's almost like frowned upon or seen as weakness. Like if you're having a really rough day at work and you just can't handle it, you break down and start crying, people think you're weak.
Well, and that is an issue. Now, I think there's, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's actually a lot of medical or scientific evidence to suggest that crying is actually a therapeutic thing that has positive benefits. Now, of course, it depends on the situation. Me, I don't cry when I'm sad. Like, sad things just, I feel, I don't want to say indifferent, but I don't feel like crying when there's sad things. I just feel sad. And it makes me melancholy and reflective. Like, I'm self-reflective when I'm sad. But the things that make me cry are things that are beautiful. Like, restoring faith in humanity videos. I bawl my eyes out watching those. Like, people doing awesome things.
I'm pretty much the same way. Like, I don't... So when I say cry, I'm meaning like the, like...
Sorry.
Convulsive... And like snot dripping, and like your voice just does shit that doesn't sound good at all. Like you
True
just have no
sorrow.
control.
Yeah,
like you are just bawling, right? But like same thing. Like for me, it's like if I see an act of honor, that always makes me like tear up and like leak or whatever. But like I guess that's technically crying, but like where I'm considering it like full on cry is that sobbing, and I don't do that very often, but like there's some things, and I mean it's going to be different for everybody. Everyone's got different triggers or whatever, but like for me, doesn't matter how many times I watch it. That episode of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air where Will Smith's dad comes and then like ditches him again. And Uncle Phil comes in and he's like trying to act all tough and macho like he doesn't care, and then he's just like, "How come you don't want me, man?" And he just like, "Oh man, I can't help it. I just blubber at that,
Yeah, exactly.
Because I was adopted, so that like speaks to me, like on a real raw level.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Like
no,
it feels good to do that actually.
Well, it absolutely. Like it's sort of like getting that emotion out in a physical way, and kind of like what you were alluding to is that these kinds of situations, the things that make people cry, are personal. It varies from person to person. Like no two people are alike in that regard, in their perceptions of the world and the things that affect them. So how can we have some kind of blanket statement like crying is bad? Right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're not manly if you cry. Like, I would actually say you're probably more manly. If you have the balls to cry in public, you're more manly than the people who try to hide it and tuck it inside. And because it's that, like, basically you don't give a shit.
Well,
I guess.
It brings people closer together, too, because, like, when you open up like that, emotionally with someone and they're accepting of it or whatever, or they share it with you, that's a real bonding moment there,
It is.
Like I've like those stick in your memory forever. Like I remember having a moment like that with my dad. Like I've only seen my dad cry once, and it's because I lipped off to him and he smacked me and it hurt so bad I cried for a straight hour. And like toward the end of the hour he just started crying himself because he felt bad for the pain I was going
Yeah.
through. And that just stuck with me. I was like, oh, he is sorry. Like sometimes people need to see you feel emotion in order for them to get through what they're going through, because after that I was fine. The tears stopped, and that stuck with me for it's been over 25 years probably.
Wow. Oh man, that is
and
that's huge.
Like, I mean, not that the whole episode needs to be about crying or whatever, but
well, I mean, it's kind of about emotion, which does, like, I think crying is an expression of anguish or happiness. Honestly, is a big factor because I see it as kind of like the most expressive of all of those emotions. Like you can internally feel something, right? Mm-hmm. Like I could see something happen and feel something and just walk away and it doesn't matter. But if something moves you to tears, that is meaningful. And especially if you're able to just let it go in public. Yeah.
Now what about anger though?
Mm-hmm.
Like, in all the years I've known you, I don't know that I've ever really seen you, like, Hulk out. Like, I've seen you get a little agitated, maybe raise your voice once or twice when we were business partners or something. But never, like, break shit mad, like...
I've been there sometimes. It's a whole, like, Tears for Fears kind of shout sort of thing. Like, every once in a while, you gotta just bust something, especially if it injures you. I've been there. Yeah. And especially when I was younger, because when I was younger, things were so binary. Like, you get angry, you get violent, right? Like, that's how it is. But nowadays, I see things as a lot more nuanced and complex. I get angry about something. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. I'm going to take a step back. Why am I angry? What's going on here? What is the proper response? And maybe not everybody follows that path, but that's the path that I do follow.
Yeah, I mean, I think as people get older, that's typically what most people tend to do. I'm certainly not as quick to anger anymore, but I think it's also just a conditional thing. Like, I'm actually, like, pretty laid back and chill now for the last 10 plus years. Mm-hmm. But there was a little brief section where I was dating a girl that knew how to push buttons and did it gleefully in any particular fight that we were having. And I just, that was like a time in my life that I'm just not proud of because I would get pissed off and like I screamed so loud I would lose my voice for days after. And I'm not that that's not me,
Yeah, no, that's not, I know you and that isn't you.
Yeah, but it's capable. I'm capable of it. If somebody's capable of triggering that in me, and it's just like, what causes that? Like, where are those thresholds? Like, how much action potential does it take to elicit a certain emotion out of somebody?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's kind of the part where your defenses break down, where your logic dissolves and you just let your emotion fly.
Okay, logic.
Yeah. Can
logic and emotion coexist?
I think so. Well, totally.
Yeah, because people tend to. I blame this on Spock.
Yeah,
but people tend to think it's one or the other. It's
no.
Logic or emotion. If you're emotional, you're not being logical.
I was gonna talk about Spock because I think Spock is the perfect illustration of a balance between emotion and logic. Like, they are like a symbiotic kind of thing. Mm-hmm. If you're pure logic, you're indifferent and cold. If you're pure emotion, you basically bend to the whims of whatever circumstance is surrounding you.
Yeah.
Freely and without any resistance. So I think like a balance is really good.
He really was like an allegorical explanation of what it's like to be a blend of those, because he's half human, half Vulcan.
Yeah.
But he was raised on Vulcan, and he strives to be more Vulcan. So you see that tension, within himself.
Mm-hmm.
But there's all those situations where he lets a little bit through, and then he tries to play it off like it never happened or whatever. and it's like, okay, so that's like a guy who's like on the fence but leaning one way, but it shows you how well balanced a person can actually be. And even if you tilt to one side or the other occasionally, it's no big deal.
Well, and I don't think that you exist in one realm or the other. I think you are an entity, a person living here, experiencing things, and you have your ups and downs. There are moments where your defenses break down and you do something crazy. And there's moments where your resolve holds and you do something logical. Like, I think it's a normal human thing, and I think it's something that we are constantly evolving towards.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to get all like hippie. I mean, I might be a little bit of a hippie, but yeah, you're not like one thing or the other, and one event doesn't define you, or it shouldn't, I guess.
No, and yeah, where some people, I think, see logic and emotion as being like side by side, separated by something. It's more like if it were a tree, emotion would be at the base of the tree, and the top part of the tree would be the logic, because that's kind of the course of things. Like, the emotion is elicited, and the logic is the complex thought that we put into a situation. It's how we process that emotion.
Yeah, and it's like if you experience something, right? Like something happens to you, and you start reacting in some way. Somebody that is, how do I say it? Enlightened, I guess, will catch themselves and be like, wait a minute, hold on. And start looking through the data, right?
Yeah.
And then decide what to do. Those who don't do that, those who are emotionally driven, will just like let things go. And there's something to be said for that in a way, because I think it is a lot simpler. Though it results in a lot of burned bridges, it's very simple.
Uh-huh.
You just play to your whims. And I think a lot of people do that. In fact, I think most people do that. Most people don't stop when they start feeling something and analyze things and be like, wait a minute, am I making the right decision? How is my decision going to affect all of my friends, or my family, or my loved ones, or whatever? I think most people just like go with it.
Well, that in itself is an emotion.
Yeah.
Empathy.
Yeah.
So if a person operated only on logic, and this is where I think the whole Vulcan philosophy falls short. If you were 100% logic, I kind of make the argument that law would kind of fall apart. Because explain to me in 100% logical fashion why it's wrong to kill someone.
Oh, wow. That is
Like-
actually a really good point.
Yeah, you can come
Yeah.
up with lots of reasons, but you can come up with lots of counter reasons that follow the letter of logic, you know?
Well, and when you're operating purely on logic, you're operating purely on data.
Yeah.
Like, it's just numbers.
Like
and
the death
equations.
penalty. The death
Yeah.
penalty has good logical arguments for either side of that coin.
But those arguments are based on emotion and empathy. Nevertheless.
Yeah. Well, I think our sense of what's right and wrong is what's coming from emotion.
Yeah.
But it's like okay, so let's try to craft a perfectly logical, non-emotional reason for not killing a person. Right? So that's actually harder than it sounds, right?
Yeah.
Because there's so much emotion ingrained in who we are as humans.
Well, sure, and you have to, if you're talking pure logic, you have to define what is a person, what is murder, and why is it bad, or good, or whatever. Like, what does it mean? And I don't know that you can actually do that through pure logic. I mean, I'm talking like programmatical kind of things.
But you look at psychopaths; they have trouble with emotion. Mm-hmm. And not all psychopaths are killers, but the ones that aren't probably don't kill because they know it's logical that if they did, they would get in trouble.
Well,
so
there's consequences
right.
for that.
So I feel like if we suppress emotion, we're putting ourselves in danger of becoming a menace to society.
Yeah. Well, and maybe there's an equilibrium there, because I think that both have merit. The logical side, the emotional side, like there's something to be said for both. But if any one of those is dominant, I think you have situations that are problematical, where you're either a cold-hearted killer or some kind of emotional person that that doesn't have any reason or actually any consistency, I guess, because you played your emotions. So yeah.
And of course, you have those crimes of passion or whatever.
Oh, that's actually a really good point. If what's right there?
Yeah.
Is the strong feeling like a lover scorned or something like that? Does that justify killing somebody?
Well, no, because that would be saying that emotions are 100% correct.
Well, and given that emotions are subjective, it's our own personal interpretation of the universe based on our gut instinct or something like that. And it varies from person to person. It's something that can't be quantified. Like you can't just say like, oh, this is what this variable means when it comes to emotions. It doesn't work that way.
Well, yeah, I think the thing we're talking about here, this can happen on either end of the spectrum. You know, if you rely on emotion or if you rely too much on logic, you can have either intellectual dishonesty or emotional dishonesty.
Yeah.
Where it's like you can have a totally solid logical argument, but you're talking out your ass. You know, like...
Well, yeah, and especially if you try to apply logic to emotion or emotion to logic, like that's where I think there's actually a pretty big divide between those.
Yeah.
I don't know that they can add up mathematically in any way, and maybe they shouldn't, but I think it's important for the logical people and the emotional people to recognize that that they're in completely different universes. And if they do, then it makes it a lot easier to understand and comprehend the other side, I guess.
Or they could learn from each other.
Yeah, I mean, well, I would hope so, and grow and improve, and maybe hit some kind of median level or something like that. Hopefully,
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that both. It's Spock talking again. I think that both have their merits and both have value, but they do only so much as no one force becomes dominant, I guess.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So then, on the flip side of things, I feel like sometimes when I do express emotion, like make myself vulnerable, it often backfires. And I don't know if it's just the delivery, because I'm not actually an overly emotional person, outwardly anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
It's probably it probably is, especially if here's the thing. If you're a logical person, your perception of the universe is this way. If you're an emotional person, your perception of the universe is that way. And the language you use to define those things is going to be different. So if you try to explain something to one side or the other, it's going to be incoherent to the other side, or worse yet, they might interpret it as something, like a negative thing or something like that. And sadly, most people are looking for a negative interpretation for some reason. I go with the philosophy, always assume best intentions. So I have very few negative experiences when it comes to my own interpretations of other people. But some people don't work that way. I don't know. Maybe it's like I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I think it's good. Like I would be okay. Like I think more people should express themselves and feel free to do that. Like you shouldn't be judged for expressing yourself or anything like that. However awkward it might be to the other side, right?
And you really should try to do it often, because like I feel like in my teenage years I would try to repress emotion real hard, and it would almost like build up, like this pressure valve would like hit a certain point, and I would just have like a nervous breakdown like every few months or something.
And if you were like, if society was okay with that expression, like the lower level expression, then that would never happen.
Yeah.
It's. I feel like this is way bigger than what we're talking about right now.
Yeah. I mean, it does feel dangerous and vulnerable to open up emotionally sometimes, because in so doing, you are, lowering defenses, and if the other person that you're expressing that to doesn't really respond in a way that you were hoping, it can be like extra painful.
Oh, yeah, totally.
So I can see why people tend to be guarded. I mean, like my own suicide attempt was not that I'm blaming it on any one thing, but it was like there was a trigger point that involved like an emotional rawness.
Yeah.
And I mean there is a danger in that, in that you can if you're not like myself, if you're not well versed or comfortable in your own skin as far as expressing emotion. It's like something that's you're not well experienced at, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because I did try to practice a sort of repression for many, many years, and it's just kind of become like my default, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so if I do try to express emotion and it's not taken well, I do kind of get inside my head quite a bit and reflect on that and get into this negative feedback loop. Like, that was bad. Don't do that again. Repress more robot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like.
Well, yeah. I'm sorry. I opened a packet of Skittles. No, that's a good point. If. Oh man, there's a lot to unpack there. I think the important thing to note is that you shouldn't judge yourself based on how other people perceive you. You just have to be your own person. And that's probably the hardest thing ever to do. To just express yourself, be yourself, you know, don't give a shit about what people think. And if somebody doesn't align with what you're saying or doesn't comprehend it, you know, fuck them if they can't take a joke, I guess. And that's hard. That is a very, very difficult thing to deal with. Because we do tend to evaluate ourselves based on the perception of the outside world. Like what other people think of us. The comments we get. You know, likes on Facebook or something, or Instagram or whatever. You know, those things seem to be like a big deal to people. But they're really, if you think about it, they're not. Your value comes from within, not from the outside world. Because who knows you better than yourself? Somebody else doesn't know you, and yeah, you could be trying to express yourself or tell a story or something like that, and they might not get it. And if they don't, it actually doesn't matter. Like, okay, maybe if it really matters that they do, then just take a different approach. I'm thinking about people I know and hoping to make this a PSA, I guess.
Yeah.
In this regard.
So, what about emotional validation? So, let's say you tell a joke or something, and another person feels emotionally offended by that joke.
Mm-hmm.
But logically, you don't see a reason why anyone would be offended by that. What's the right course of action in that?
Well, I mean, if you can logically explain it, then that's it. There's no... You can logically explain why there's no reason why somebody should be responding the way they do. And if they respond outside the pattern that makes sense, then they're behaving erratically. And therefore, it doesn't matter. Like, well, okay, yeah, it does matter to some people.
Yeah, but now we're talking about logic and emotion on the same plane again, and that's really not how it works, right? You know, like logic is on top. It comes after the emotion is experienced.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, is it right to use logic to invalidate another person's feelings that are elicited by something?
No, they may be valid to that person, but they don't have to be valid to you. That's the thing.
And
that's the whole, like, separation, like, separating yourself from another person. Like, this is this person and their experiences, and this is how they perceive the world, and this is you and how you perceive the world. And it might be different.
Yeah.
And, that's actually probably one of the greatest lessons I've ever learned, is that people's perception of the universe, the way they interpret things and stuff, is the sum total of their experiences. And so, therefore, their experiences cannot be the same experiences I've had. We've had different experiences. We might have grown up in different areas of town, different socioeconomic situations, gone to different schools, whatever. So, therefore, the way they perceive things is naturally going to be different. And it might be significant to you, or you might be significant to them, but at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. Or it doesn't matter in a way that you should really get too involved in.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with all that. I feel like society wants us to think that in that situation we need to be profusely apologetic and never do it again.
Yeah.
But I feel like, if your intent was not to harm, and you just explain your stance, and you recognize that a joke like that isn't going to go over well with that person in the future, and try to avoid it, no harm done then. Because you can't go and erase the past. You can't take back the last 5 seconds or whatever.
That's true, yeah.
So, I mean, an apology might placate that person. It might not, but I don't know that it's really necessary. I think apologies are more for, like, when you intended to hurt someone and then you see that was wrong.
An apology might be a retraction of intent. An explanation might be better for situations where you have a difference of opinion. And I would hope that people would take an explanation to heart, right? Like, you're just explaining what you were hoping to convey, the story you were trying to tell, or something like that, and it should be good enough.
Yeah. People try to invalidate explanations, too. They say, oh, it's not an apology if you say but. It's like, well, I think it's important to explain where you're coming from. If you just say, I'm sorry, and that's it, that sounds really false. I don't know.
Well, and I think intent is the key. And I think people should be looking at that. Like I said earlier on, always assume best intentions. That's one of my core doctrines. I naturally assume that everybody doing whatever has the best intention. They were hoping to tell a joke or, make somebody laugh or something like that, or tell a story. They didn't hope to hurt somebody. That wasn't their intent. But a lot of people are trained to expect that people are going to do shitty things to them. And I don't think people try to do shitty things. I think people are just as much a dumbass as anybody else. They're just fucking around on this planet and hoping to make ends meet and, that kind of thing. And that's where I come from. Like, okay, if I feel something, I feel something. But then I step back and I'm like, oh, you have to assume best intentions. So start from that level and go forward.
And ultimately, we're responsible for our own emotions.
That's true. Exactly.
Nobody really has. I mean,
Well,
I don't want to say like it's all or none or anything, but for the most part, nobody really has the power to hurt you. But that's not 100% true.
Well, that's true, and it is something that you kind of have to like the.
Well, it's intent.
Well,
It's intent. If a person has intent to hurt you and it hurts you, yeah, they're the asshole.
well, but like
But-
the vampire at the door, you have to let them in. So you actually.
Unless the vampire has a gun.
Okay, well, that does actually change things. But when we're talking emotions, there are no guns. And, you know, I think about things like Labyrinth. There's that scene where Sarah realizes that she has a realization, and she's like, you have no power over me. And basically, yeah, like she's free at that point. Because nobody has any power over you. They don't. Like, you have power over yourself. And if somebody's playing you and gaming you, well, you can completely control the game if you know what to do. And I might have a little bit of animosity to the public education system for not teaching people how to control that scenario. But that's the thing, like, nobody has control over you. I mean, okay, yeah, if they put you in a cage and stick you with like a skewer, a hot skewer or something like that, I guess there's nothing you can do there. But if somebody's telling you words, they have no control over you. At that point, they are deceiving you to the point where you are controlling yourself. And if you learn to manipulate those things, like using logic and emotion together, you can control the game. Then you could be invincible.
How
Saying.
many lights do you see?
There are 4 lights. Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, I mean, if you're vulnerable mostly to people that you place stock in their opinion of you.
That's true.
And,
yeah.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing to, I don't want to say worry about, but, to consider how other people think of you isn't necessarily a bad thing. So, yeah, like if someone you value the opinion of has a negative opinion of you, I can see that it's harmful. But yeah, you can certainly decide, like, well, how much do I really need to value this particular opinion,
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think in that moment, then you can get power back.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very subjective, it's...
It is. And, again, nobody controls you. Like, emotionally. Well, okay. As of 2020, nobody controls you emotionally. We don't have some kind of, like, machine that can manipulate your mind or control your brain waves or make you feel something against your will. No. All we can do is say things. And it's up to you how you want to interpret and respond to those kinds of statements.
Well, okay, so there are manipulative tactics that people can use to trap someone in a corner to where, like that abusive girl I was dating knew which buttons to push and knew how to trap me in that corner so she could just push the buttons over and over again until I snapped. And I was in such a precarious financial situation that I really couldn't end the relationship. I couldn't move out on my own. I was pretty much trapped there, and she knew it. And in that way, she kind of did have control on my emotions because she already knew which places to poke.
Well, maybe.
So there are certain situations where a person, like in torture situations or brainwashing situations, you can absolutely take control of a person's emotions.
You can, but it does depend on the other person reciprocating. You can't control another person by force. All you can do is manipulate the circumstances or the situation to trick another person into manipulating themselves. And we're all subject to that. Like that's not something that it's like, yeah, you think you're better. Yeah, everybody can fall for that. In ooh, I feel like this is gonna get like into a really huge episode at this point, but I think that's kind of what I'm saying right there. Is like, well, like, okay, I have a book on hypnosis, and people think, oh, hypnosis is some kind of woo guy, like, dangling the thing, and, like, you're getting very sleepy. No, all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. That is the very first thing in that book. Mm-hmm. So, all deception is self-deception, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I'm going down hippy-dippy territory there, but it kind of does fit into the same kind of category that like, nobody can control you. What they can do is trick you into controlling yourself for their own benefit. And it's not like if you fall for that, you're some kind of weakling or something. Like, no, we're all susceptible to that. And maybe some kind of balance between logic and emotion, a Spockian philosophy, might actually guard us against that. But it's very hard to achieve. So, I don't. What do I know? I'm just a fucking idiot. So,
Yeah, this episode could go on forever.
Yeah.
I think it was a very good one, though. It would be interesting to open it up and hear what y'all have to say. That's the thing I say now, because I live in Memphis. Y'all. But yeah, like, how do you see emotion? How do you reconcile emotion and logic?
And how do you deal with narcissists and people that want to manipulate you? How do you guard against that? How do you deal with that kind of situation? Like, we've all been there.
Yeah.
There's always been somebody who's tricked us. How can we... Wait, I was about to go into a George Bushian... You fool me once, shame on me. You can't get fooled again. But, that's the thing. Like, how do you avoid... how do you avoid those kinds of things? And how do you talk to somebody who is falling for the same kinds of tricks? Because, you and I have been through a lot. We've learned a lot. So what about somebody who's new? Who doesn't know? And they're susceptible, and they have this kind of optimistic, pie in the sky, kind of like rainbows and unicorns thing, like, oh, I love that person, or oh, he loves me, or she loves me, or whatever. How do you deal with that? How do you tell them you're being suckered? So that doesn't happen to other people.
Yeah, I mean, some people just have a grasp, and others are just kind of flailing about. I think there was that was a loud motorcycle.
Yeah.
There was a really great philosopher that said, chocolate rain. Some stay dry and others feel the pain.
Chocolate rain.
Chocolate rain.
Tazon day. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But no, that actually is kind of poignant, you know, like, we could be out in the same storm, and some of us see it as how wet we're getting, and others see it as, like, how dry we've stayed, despite the storm, you know, and,
yeah.
You know.
Wow, that's
sometimes you need to move away from the mic to breathe in.
Yeah. I never saw that as deep as you mentioned, but yeah, that's good. Yeah. Oh man, this has been a pretty good episode. Quite a good conversation.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've kind of only scratched the surface, really.
Yeah.
But that's good, because keep the conversation going down in the comment section. Yeah. Oh, man.
And,
yeah.
Well, thanks for deep sink diving with us, and stick around for the song, which will be our normal black screen. You don't have to sit here looking at us sitting on a couch anymore.
Mm-hmm. Never moving, never changing. It's just us sitting on a couch or two. Yeah. Oh, man.
All right. Well, have a good night.
Take it easy.